80% line goes through Scotland, round about Dundee, so in Newcastle they're going to get less of the sun visible, probably about 13% left at maximum.
Smashing. Hercules at the moment, I have to tell you, is actually turning round to get back to do another run to point at the sun, so we'll be seeing that in a short while. And they show very clearly, you know, those pictures, these pictures do, and the Hercules, how the moon is gradually covering the sun. Anyway, look, there are crucial moments here, but it's mostly cloudy under the path of totality. In fact, almost entirely cloudy wherever we are. But, you know, the team down at RAF Lynham are going to be our absolute lifesavers. And this is how they set about this operation.
The Hercules is a plane that's used to coping with everything from war zones to delivering food and medical supplies. But a few days ago, it was rehearsing for a mission that's very different, to bring what could be the only pictures of the eclipse over Britain. The layout of the aircraft makes it perfect as an airborne camera platform, and the man in the hot seat is pilot Bert Wheaton.
At the back of the Hercules, we've got the cargo ramp and door used for loading and unloading the aircraft. We won't be able to get a good shot of the sun from these doors because of the elevation of the sun, but we will be able to see the approaching shadow area. Moving further down the aeroplane, we have the side doors for paratroop dispatch. By opening one of these, we'll be able to get a side aspect of the sun during the time of the eclipse.
Our team of engineers descended on RAF Lynham for the test flight, but they have to overcome a big problem. The vibration of the plane could ruin the close-up pictures of the sun. So on trial is a gyro-stabilized camera normally used to follow horse races. The test run also gives Bert Wheaton the chance to check out his flight plan.
The outside broadcast of the BBC is based in Marazion, which is about here. The centre line of the eclipse is the bottom line that you can see. The BBC ground station that will receive our signal is just on the centre line, just about here. We've chosen to fly a track which is 90 degrees to the sun. The sun on the day will be in this sort of direction. We're going to fly on a northeasterly track. We've chosen so that we can see the sun out of a side door and film it at the same time.
If you have an emergency whilst we're airborne or on the runway, you'll hear a set of rings on the alarm bells. Our life jackets are situated all around the aircraft in the orange storages above your head.
After safety checks, it's time to take off. Today's flight time is planned so the sun will be in the same position as during the eclipse. En route to Cornwall, there's a chance to check the equipment one more time and to fit the solar filters to the cameras. At 8,000 feet above the cloud, there's a clear view of the sun. The gyro camera is working, but one minor hitch. Sitting away from the sun, it's hard to find it in the sky. With a little practice, it's there, and the picture's stable enough to zoom right in to see the sunspots. If cloud forces Bert to fly higher on the day, they won't be able to open the doors, so there has to be an alternative. Up in the cockpit, they try a handheld camera. It gives a sharp image, but the vibration of the plane means they can't zoom in quite as close. After an hour of flying, it's time to head back to RAF Lynham. The flight's gone well, but there's still more to do.
We've proved the principle that, you know, we will get something. It's just now we'll work out how it all goes. We've got the pictures in here, now we've just got to get them down to the ground. It's another story altogether.
It does put a certain amount of pressure on us to get the job done and be in the right place at the right time, which is our main worry. But still a big sense of excitement that we're actually going to be flying during the night, during the day, which is quite a novel experience. And personally, I find it quite exciting as I'm a Cornishman and I'll be flying over effectively my home turf. So it puts another angle on it for me, another aspect on it.
So if you've just joined us, we're watching the progress of the first solar eclipse visible in Britain for 72 years. This, incidentally, I don't know whether you can see it, is the shot we got from Alderney. So the sky's not entirely blank over Alderney. Big chunk out of there, John.
Yes, yes. We've been going in Alderney for just over half an hour now, so we've got just a little bit longer to go than that again before we get to the really exciting bits.
Almost the only bit in the southwest where you can actually see it, and they'll get totality there, won't they?
They will certainly get totality there. Let's hope the clouds keep away for them.
But at the moment, parts of the country can now see a partial eclipse. And there's a sense of anticipation all over the southwest where the moon shadow, which will make the eclipse total, of course, is due, what, in about 30, 38, 40 minutes. Actually, that's the picture a lot of people in the country are seeing in London. A better picture than down here.
Wow, yes.
That's not bad, is it?
That's pretty good.
We should have stayed,
coming over here.
stayed up there. Oh, that's just the cloud there.
That's just the cloud. The limb of the moon is round here.
Okay. At that time, incidentally, when this shadow comes, the people who've seen it before tell me, anyway, the place will go completely dark. It still seems hard to believe all this, but it's all totally predictable, isn't it, from a science point of view?
Absolutely. It's all down to some basic, simple physics, really.
There's no such thing as simple physics, John. Try and explain it to us with this rather delightful... This is called an orrery, isn't it?
This is called an orrery, and here it's a wonderful mechanical model. And here we've got the sun in the middle of everything, of course, and here's the Earth, and here's the moon. And if we make the moon move in between the sun and the Earth, here you can see it revolving around, they line up perfectly, and because of the relative sizes, then the moon appears to have the same sizes in the sky as the sun, and so we get the total shadow of the moon projected by the sun onto the Earth, and we get a total eclipse there. The moon carries on around here, and when it gets around to the other side of the moon, then we have
a lunar eclipse.
That's right. That's when we have an opportunity.
All that's understandable. What isn't, very briefly because we've got to move on, what isn't is how you can predict it right to the last second.
We can predict it because we have many, many centuries of observations, and we understand the orbits very precisely. And the moon sometimes comes through at a slightly higher position here, and then the shadow misses the Earth completely, and we don't get a total eclipse then. We only get these total perfect lineups on average about every 18 months or so.
It's a lovely toy, isn't it? John, for the time being, thanks very much indeed. Pleasure.
Look at that.
Who are designed to react to light. They're designed on the circadian rhythm just like humans are. And when an eclipse occurs, especially a total eclipse, darkness descends and they react to it. So you have animals come out basically like it's night because they don't have any concept of the 24-hour period like we do. We can accept the fact that the eclipse or the darkness is caused by the eclipse. And the animals don't have that advantage. They just have darkness and light instinct. And that's, so you'll see, especially in the total eclipse regions around England and Central Europe, if you're watching it, you notice the animals will start coming out again because they assume that night has begun. They have no concept of the time.
Right. Edward, we're looking at a live picture of the eclipse as it's taking place. Describe what you see there.
What we're seeing is the moon's shadow block part of the sun, and basically you have a crescent shape. And what's happening is just because we're out of the path of totality here, that will not be completely obscured. And we're in the penumbra, which is the lighter part of the Earth's shadow. And a larger region of the Earth will see a partial eclipse because the penumbra can take up between 53 to 58% of the Earth's surface, where the umbra itself, the darker part, can only encompass about 3%.
Now, this is a live picture from an airplane over Britain. We understand that the best way, or perhaps one of the ways to actually follow the eclipse is to board the Concorde and fly along.
Board the Concorde because the eclipse is actually starting here, right off the coast of Nova Scotia, and over the next 3 hours it will be crossing the Atlantic across England, Central Europe, and then through the Middle East, and then it will end in the Bay of Bengal, which is east of India. So if you wanted to watch the eclipse as much as possible, you could get on the Concorde and then basically follow the totality path.
For astronomers like yourself, how significant is this event, and what do you learn from these kinds of events?
Well, the one significant aspect for me is the fact that we can predict it. The fact that we can actually pinpoint the exact time when it will occur. It sort of indicates that we've developed some sort of mastery of nature and our way of basically calculating the celestial mechanics, which enable us to determine when these events occur. So apart from the aesthetic value, it's the idea that humans have learned enough about the heavens to be able to know.
It's a very rare event, and that's why we call it a once-in-a-lifetime event. If you sit on any
place in the Earth, on the Earth, and wait for a total eclipse to come, you could wait for 200 years.
Now, you can hear the helicopters. We can't apologise for them because they're actually ours, but there we are. We'll bring you the pictures that they're filming very shortly. There we are. That's our helicopter. It's flying above us. It's giving you great pictures, but it means we have to shout an awful lot. And Richard, this area of Cornwall that we're looking at, this spur point, I mean, does offer a unique opportunity just to see the sky, the horizon, the sea, the mountains. And what we were hoping to see was 35 miles away on the hills, this black line, it's been described, just hurtling towards us.
What we'd hoped to see is indeed that shadow racing towards us, and people that have seen that phenomenon say that is a very frightening and awesome event in itself. During totality, what we have to remember is that the shadow itself is a circle, not a track across the ground, and it's a circle that's moving across the ground. So what we would expect to see during totality, if it was clear, and indeed we may even see that today, looking around at the horizon.
Well, now there is a bright patch there. Look, that's our camera here. Yeah. This is our special camera that we've got at the castle here, which has all the right filters on it, looking at the sun. Now, there's a chance we might actually see something.
There is, yeah, and I think we not until the last second will I give up hope that the sun's going to appear through one of those breaks in the cloud. But I think if it doesn't, what we can expect to see is it get very dark. But as I was explaining, I think you can expect that on the horizon, where you see it much brighter now, we'll be able to look all round, and there will be a sort of almost like a sense of dawn, but all around we'll be able to look from this vantage point 360 degrees around us and see an apparent dawn taking place all around us during totality.
Now, there are thousands of amateur astronomers out here looking at the skies around us. For them, of course, they know to be careful. We've got to stress to people who are watching this maybe in London, it is just not worth the risk, is it, to look at the sun at any point?
It's not worth the risk during the partial phase to look at the sun directly without protection from proper filters. It's extremely dangerous to look through it through any form of optical instrument, binoculars or a camera lens or anything like that. You really will do damage to your eyes very quickly indeed, and certainly before you realise that you're doing damage, so it's just not worth the risk. And I think some of the views that we're seeing on the TV screen here, taken from the air, certainly the ones taken from the aircraft, are revealing far more than people will see by risking their eyesight and looking directly at the sun.
Okay, now one of those amateur astronomers
can almost see it's heading towards totality there, but in Torbay, I think that will be on the line of totality.
I think so, yes it is, and it's actually quite a good shot, isn't it? If you were there, you'd be very happy with that, considering some other parts of the country won't see it at all. Let's move on to Newcastle. Oh my goodness, look at that. Terrific shot there, absolutely terrific. So those in Newcastle getting a great shot.
And also pictures from the Hercules, which we've had during the course of the morning. We were trying to bring those to you right now. Technical problems being as they are, because an aircraft is flying around at several hundred miles an hour, obviously doing a triangular pattern. We're back with that eclipse as it happens in a couple of minutes. Until then, the weather. Here's Rob.
We're in West 12, not that far from Greenwich.
Aerial glow. Well, as you... And I think
everyone should know.
It's too thick to be...
Everybody's going to face this at 11:11 this morning, and everybody, to a man and woman.
Camera point in Newcastle. At 11 minutes past the hour, the southern tip of the UK mainland will go completely dark at what is called the moment of totality. Then we'll be following the moon's shadow, or umbra, across Europe all the way into Asia, where the eclipse eventually stops just off the Indian subcontinent, actually in the Bay of Bengal.
Well, a total solar eclipse occurs when the moon passes directly.
Minutes, people around the country will be taking the opportunity to witness for themselves this once-in-a-lifetime experience.
To earlier, Newcastle upon Tyne, to give it its proper name, is not in the line of totality. Obviously, I think it's about 70 or 80% within the line of totality. That's one of the best shots we've got from our various vantage points around the UK, indeed all over Europe. Obviously, the eclipse carries on all over Europe. Let's talk to our correspondent, Robert Hall.
Well, just looking at your pictures there, it's absolutely remarkable and such a shame that I can't see it. From here it's been spitting and spotting with rain. It had people here, as you can see, lining the ramparts of Pendennis Castle, stop.
As the moon goes right in front of the sun, then we will get down to zero and have no energy whatsoever. So there you go.
You know, the thing I find most ironic about this whole event is that this was meant to be the eclipse that was watched by the most people ever in Britain because of television and everything. And the whole thing seems destined to be hidden from us today. And you've got
total shadow. Still going to look great.
Which is what people want to study, isn't it?
Yeah, it's an odd, as an odd appearance. It's a sort of greyish white. Some people describe it as a silvery effect. For this eclipse, we expect it to radiate all around the sun, but there are occasions when you see it coming out and following the magnetic fields of the sun. So there is structure in that, and that indeed is the thing that most people follow eclipses to look at is the appearance of the corona that you can't see at any other time.
It's the heat generated by that outer aspect of the sun, which many people want to understand more about, isn't it?
Yes, because as we were discussing earlier, the surface of the sun is at 5,000 or 6,000 degrees centigrade, and that generates most of the...
Have gathered, but the crowds are there, looking out over there, taking the odd snapshot.
And there are some breaks in the cloud to the south. If they will hurry up, then Patrick might get one of those gaps in Falmouth as they drift across.
Okay. I think the street lights are coming on here in Penzance. They're automatic, I imagine, John, aren't they?
Yes.
You can see them there, look.
Yes, yes. Some come on by timers, but a lot these days come on automatically as their sensors are triggered as they get towards dusk. And people at home have got to watch out now because their neighbour's security light may very well come on their garage, triggered by the folk across the road's cat or whatever.
And this is our best picture, John, isn't it? This is the picture from the Hercules.
Yes. Oh,
and imagining
that's really
that it's right
fine.
over us. 4 minutes, just over 4 minutes, isn't it, to go to totality?
4 minutes here, and they're a little bit further west from us, so they will get it a bit earlier.
So a bit ahead of us, in fact.
Bit ahead of us.
And this, I think, is Alderney, and Jamie Theakston's under that one in Alderney. Jamie, you there?
Yes, Michael, we're here in Alderney. As you can see, we've got a great view here. There's a little bit of light cloud just blowing over us here. It's actually become remarkably cold. I'm joined, of course, by Dr. Chris Riley, BBC astronomer. Chris, it's getting quite eerie now here.
It is really eerie, Jamie. We've both got our coats on. There's a chill descended in the air. There's only a few % of the sun left, and it's just tantalizingly visible through a gap in the clouds right above our heads here. But the wind, I swear, has changed direction. I know Patrick doesn't believe this, but I think it has.
We've got, there's a gannet colony, of course, not far away from here. There were a lot of birds around earlier. They seem to have cleared. Is that a sense that it's getting darker?
Certainly, there seems to be a kind of hush that's descending over nature here as well. Although the wind has got up, everything else is pretty silent, really. So it's getting kind of spooky.
And the cloud cover, I mean, it's extraordinary now. I don't think I've ever seen clouds like this before. I mean, it's broken cloud, but it seems to be illuminated around the edges.
It's a real kind of mackerel sky, I think it's called, where you've got these kind of patches around the clouds that are illuminated, as you say, and as the temperature drops further, these clouds should shrink both in height and in width, so it might just clear up, and that gap that we can see the eclipse through now might just stay with us over totality.
Right, well, let's keep our fingers crossed. I know they've got 2 minutes 40
outside Falmouth, and here it is getting noticeably darker. The light is dropping far more than you might expect just from the heavy cloud we have overhead. That's really noticed. You can feel it now, can't you, Stuart?
It's starting to feel quite eerie, quite surreal here, yes.
That was what everybody has said. It is very, very strange feeling as that light starts to go. And again, we keep an eye on the pictures there from above the cloud bank. We're now almost down to the diamond ring, aren't we? What they call the diamond ring.
Yes.
Will we see that? There's obviously a little bit of cloud there.
Yes, well, soon they'll have to change their exposure time to get a good view of that, and you'll really see that.
As you can see that light dropping, can't you? We're looking across the bay below us there.
Indeed.
And it's really good. Now you can feel. Is that the shadow starting to come now? We can just suddenly felt the light drop there. You really feel that light level dropping?
Yes, I'm looking for the shadow. It's going to come screaming towards us from over there in the west.
We see it even though there is thick cloud here. You'll see it coming, even with this now.
Yes, we hope so. Perhaps over the top of the clouds, where you see the bright clouds, it will just sweep across.
We've got about 2 minutes to go, I would say, something of that order. 1.5 minutes to go, I'm being told. So, very, very close to that moment of totality. It is weird, isn't it? It's very, very odd, and the light, the character of the light seems to change as the shadow comes across.
This sort of is exciting to me. There's nothing we can do. We can't stop this. This just happens. We're just here, passive observers to this whole march of kind of celestial mechanics.
10 minutes to the west of us, and again we can see things thinning and the horns drawing in.
Okay, what do you see there?
Oh, well, it is, I say it again, it's absolutely awesome.
Show a shot on the platform here of just how dark it is. I can feel that shadow coming across. It's dropping right down, the light levels are dropping right down. We've got flash guns going off
going
here.
in the ocean.
The light level dropping right down there.
See that the horizon to the south is still bright. We're looking out of the zone of totality there. Looks like a huge end of the world experience to the west. Still light towards Patrick in Falmouth. Isn't this absolutely wonderful? Now you're convinced this is what people come for.
It's extraordinary out here.
Here from the Hercules, we're beginning to see little beads forming at the end of the arc here as the last bit of sun is disappearing behind the moon. It's all breaking up now into this final point of light. Do you sort of
lights on the boats out
Absolutely.
there? Look at that. We're almost there is the shot.
There's the
diamond ring.
There's the diamond ring.
Here are some Bailey's beads, and there is totality. We begin to see some prominences around the sun here.
And leave aside all the atmosphere and the height. This is what the scientists are looking at as well, isn't it?
This is really wonderful. Now we've got midnight outside. Midnight at midday.
But
now
just a little bit of light on the far horizon.
Here's the corona now. This wonderful structure of the sun's atmosphere being twisted and contorted and heated by the sun's magnetic field up to several million degrees. The only time you can see it by eye.
So this is the time when you can actually see what the sun does.
Absolutely. I've spent 30 years studying this outer atmosphere of the sun, and for me,
it's a completely eerie sign.
Speak up slightly.
Once in a lifetime experience.
Around near the horizon, and that is basically above us.
Because of the magnetic field lines.
Special colors right now as we look up and are able for the
total.
5 great videos. It's all here.
We've got 2 or 3 more seconds to go here. Totality is now essentially over here. Daylight returns.
And it is. That's extraordinary, isn't it? You can see actually on the Hercules picture, you can see the light coming. Here you can see it actually on the horizon.
Absolutely. And now if we look to the east, we can see the shadow moving away. Patrick is probably about to come out of the shadow in Falmouth in about 5 seconds or so, and then the shadow is still heading eastwards. Totality.
This is the diamond ring, isn't it?
This is the diamond ring coming out. Isn't that beautiful? The most precious, the most elusive diamond that you will ever see. Now we're back with the film.
Pity that the picture from the Hercules just broke up as we were seeing the diamond ring, the solitaire. So Alderney, it's not yet total eclipse, because obviously being further...
And it was a sensational thing.
Yes, absolutely.
Over the channel.
It's heading towards Patrick Moore, isn't it?
It's left Patrick, it's now heading towards Alderney. They've got about a minute and a bit to go before totality.
Hang on a second, John. Let's see if we can see Patrick Moore. We can see how he reacted. Patrick, did you enjoy that?
Well, in a way I did. It was an eerie experience, and clearly Yankoff showed that there was a marvellous ground-up. Down here, unfortunately, in St Anthony Head, we were under total cloud. The drop in the light level was quite amazing, more than I'd ever known before, and the rise at the end, when the totality ended, was equally marked. But it was a strange, weird experience, one that I'm, in a way, glad to have been through, but very sorry we didn't see what was quite clearly a magnificent solar corona. You'll try that up in our Sky at Night programme later on, but at the present moment I fear that we have to say that from here we didn't see the corona, but we did have a strange experience, and one that I think very few people will ever have again. So at least we have been through the last English total solar eclipse of the millennium.
Man for the globe.
Dennis, back to you in the studio.
We got something, we got the temperature drop, certainly, and the light drop. We got that, and some strange atmospheric effects too. A strange kind of breeze I've not come across before. We learnt something from it, but of course we didn't actually see it ourselves. And that's a great disappointment, but, well, we make the best of a bad job, and at least we saw something. We did have one tantalising view of the partial phase about 10 minutes earlier.
Patrick, thanks very much indeed. Well, there was extraordinary scenes outside here. When the shadow passed over and went totally dark and everybody started screaming. Philippa's out there. What's the atmosphere like there now, Philippa?
Well,
even without the
teary.
Here comes something.
Once in a lifetime,
Yeah.
you had two, didn't you?
Yes.
It brought back a lot of memories, didn't it?
Yeah. Back in time.
You went back in time. It was darker then, you said. But we were looking at the beach and people were hugging and kissing and people have been drawing.
I guess that's you doing it.
Particles. So you end up seeing this absolutely enormous version of the school experiment you used to do when you were 12, which was a magnet with shavings and a piece of paper used to...
Cornwall, the peninsula that juts between...
Just a few minutes following Cornwall. That's right. I mean, that was probably, as we saw it, perhaps 5, 6, 7 minutes before totality. So in fact, the light again, level it's is going. down. You can see it going. That's right. But totality is the thing. I'm awfully sorry. I'm not trying to take it away from London, but you must see a total eclipse. You must travel to totality, and it must be sunny.
Your makeup after all that tearing and crying. This is a picture from Alderney, I think, John, if you can see it from here.
Wonderful, because you can see the red prominences very clearly. Here's, this looks like third contact coming. There's the return of the sun.
And
just
the
have a
diamond ring.
quick glimpse at those red splots. Those are prominences in the solar atmosphere. We've now come to the diamond ring effect. And as it grows, can you see little blips on the end of it? Those are particular craters on the moon being illuminated.
And this is the final eclipse on UK soil from Alderney, isn't it?
Now it's left the UK, yes, and we're giving it to the Europeans to have a bit of fun with. And they can play with it and then post it off further eastwards.
How much can scientists get from that? You said, there's the prominences. But is this one of those rare opportunities to see what they actually are?
It's a rare opportunity to see them directly from the ground, and from the ground we can deploy very much more sophisticated instruments. We've obviously got spacecraft which aren't actually in orbit around the Earth, they're sort of orbiting the Sun in fact, that give us some of the really super pictures in different sorts of wavelengths.
Well, John, thanks. We were seeing what the site was from Alderney. We can go to Alderney and see what the people in the Channel Islands made of it. Jamie.
Oh dear, I don't think I've ever experienced anything quite like that. You can probably hear the crowd behind us. Did you enjoy that? Chris, I mean, remarkable scenes then.
Jamie, we've just stood in the shadow of the moon. I mean, I can't say more than that. It was travelling over our heads at 2,000 miles an hour. Everything went dark. There was this eerie twilight around us, 360 degrees. I'm so moved. It was the most amazing experience of my life.
Now, it's brightening up rapidly now, but explain to it, I mean, it literally came right across the channel at a rate, well, 2,000 miles an hour. And you can actually see that. I mean, couldn't you?
You could literally see the sky darkening behind us here, and this huge wall of darkness rushing over our heads and out, as John says, towards France now. The last eclipse on UK soil for 91 years is over.
Wow. Unbelievable. Day broke during the day. I mean, it really was one of the most exciting things I've seen. So now it's gone, it's off to France.
It is. We'll be following it further on there over its course as it hurries across, even as far as Iran and onto India over the next hour or so.
Right, extraordinary scenes. Thanks so much. Let's go back to Cornwall. Back to you, Michael.
Yeah. Well, there we go. Let's have a look outside now and see what's actually happening there.
Well, we can see the horizon is now light.
We can see it now, but let's have a look at it during totality, because we were actually concentrating, weren't we, John? Mostly, and obviously, on the shot out of the Hercules. But the atmosphere out here was the thing that kept distracting me.
It really was spectacular. I mean, it really was the middle of the night.
Yeah, it was. Look at all those lights flashing. People trying to capture it, ruining it, I suppose, by those flashlights.
I always love people that take them over too late now, yeah. I mean, it's really midnight darkness there. It really is absolutely amazing. And this super lighting effect to the south. If you tried to set it up that way, I doubt if you could.
If you were a film director, it'd cost you millions to do that, wouldn't it?
Absolutely, absolutely. So, do you want to go and see the 2001 eclipse?
Well, I don't know, I might be tempted. I wasn't tempted before, but it certainly was
you are now.
Yeah, I'd like to see without having to gas to you about it. But if we look outside now, normality returns. A grey August day in Cornwall out there on the beach.
But to be quite honest, I mean, even though we didn't actually see the corona ourselves here, the memory of this is going to stay with people for the rest of their lives.
Nobody wants it. It's strange, it's dark and there's a weird kind of dampness. You know, that's cool.
Now, it's understandable why a lot of people seem to think that it's got some kind of spiritual significance. Are you of that mindset? Do you
And there'll be a tiny little bite about 12:30 at the opposite side from where it started, and that'll be the end of the eclipse. It's clearing again. The sun's clearing from those thin clouds again.
So we've been pretty lucky here. We've had a pretty good view.
Yes, on way to work this morning it was 10/10 cloud, and then gradually as my train got closer and closer the sky cleared. I'm absolutely astonished. We had a cloudy weather program all prepared, you see, to make sure people didn't go away disappointed, but we haven't had to use that. It's absolutely fantastic.
You must have been delighted when you saw the skies clearing here in London.
Indeed I did. I'm absolutely amazed and pleased. Yep.
And next eclipse, where are you going to see the next one?
Well, I'm not sure when the next partial eclipse is, but there's another total eclipse, 2001, but you must go across a line, Angola, Mozambique, from Atlantic Ocean to the Indian Ocean. And there are others in various parts of the world, but this is our own special eclipse.
Great. Well, Harry, thank you very much. And it has been very special here. It may just be enough to persuade people to go to Africa and see that next one. For now, back to you.
Thanks so much indeed. No, we just...
Clouds moved in the way and started that roar of just amazement. Now, there's another reason to go, wow. I owe my producer £5. I said I wouldn't say wow during this broadcast, but look at that shot. The Eiffel Tower in Paris as the total eclipse of the sun passes over the French capital. The lights you can see at the bottom there are a countdown to the millennium, but I'm not sure that the millennium can eclipse the eclipse. It has just been the most amazing sign. Let's talk to someone who was with us here in Cornwall and lived through the last eclipse of the millennium. Colette, just describe that moment. Was it what you were expecting?
Oh, it was much better than I was expecting. It was kind of magical because it happened so quickly that it went dark and suddenly we could see was camera lights and everybody was just cheering. It was fantastic.
Over the last few days we've all been hearing how awful the weather's going to be, how the weather's going to spoil it. Did it for you?
Not at all, because we didn't have to wear those stupid glasses. We could look directly and we just had a fantastic view. It was brilliant.
You were in a crowd of people. It's that moment where everybody is just looking up and saying, gosh, this is amazing.
Yeah, everybody didn't say anything actually. It just took our breath away, as you said before. It was fantastic.
Does this for you put everything in perspective a bit? It's a power that we just...
Thanks, Philip, and your owls. Well, of course, the eclipse is going now across Europe, heading for eventually the Bay of Bengal. And we're going to get some pictures now from Reims in France. Now they got a clear shot, and they're having a big celebration. Look.
Okay, so we're sort of resetting again.
Yeah, I know, you're resetting the clock.
Resetting the clock. Wow, they're having a good time. Here we're seeing the last piece of sun again disappearing.
It's an endless replay, isn't it?
Oh, there's some wonderful beads being formed on the end here. Just watch as this now shrinks down. Here's a beautiful pink prominence. We're gradually chopping this up into separate little baby
Oh, look, there's the beads.
This is wonderful. And now it all disappears, and hopefully somebody will take a filter off, and we're
They're
back
going
to
mad, and
they
that's the main square in
really are
Reims,
enjoying
isn't it? And there
Now,
it is, totality.
Here we are, this is totality. Now we're beginning to see the corona. It's a very busy corona because we're coming up to the maximum of the sun's activity cycle. So this is really it's faint, pearly light. About the brightness of the moon, in fact.
Well, they've been a bit
Absolutely
luckier than us in France by the cathedral there.
Here we can see the prominences again.
Oh yes, wonderful shot. Well, anyway, let's come back here and to those experiments that we were doing out there on the beach. We better tie them up to Philippa, to Helen and Francisco out there on the beach.
Thank you very much. Well, Francisco, how does that rate in your eclipse viewing?
It was a great experience. We couldn't see the corona, but we saw a beautiful landscape still here. We saw the shadow of the moon rushing from there above us and all the crowds shouting, and it was amazing. And to see this orange light around St. Michael's Mount, it was amazing. Really, really impressive eclipse.
It's actually quite amazing watching you because you came so agitated. You were running around like this, checking all your filters. Do you think you will have learnt anything from viewing this eclipse from the Earth?
Yes, well, we saw some images from the aircraft, and they were big prominences, and we saw a very roundish corona. We will discuss that tonight, I think. And it was a very interesting eclipse, almost typical of a maximum period of solar activity, which is coming to that in a couple of years' time. I'm sure that people in the rest of Europe have learned a lot about this eclipse. Yes.
Okay. Francisco, thank you so much for joining us today.
It's
I
a
know
pleasure.
it would have been better for you to be somewhere where it wasn't cloudy.
No, it's all right.
This has been great here on the beach. I don't know if we've got time to go to Radio 1 to see how they're going, or if we're going straight back to Michael. You'll soon see.
Okay, we are. We're going to take a very quick look at Radio 1 to see how they're going. Oh, we lost Radio 1 for the moment. I hope you noticed they were rubbing each other down there. Poor old Francisco came in his shorts and everything this morning, being terribly optimistic, and he's definitely put some more clothes on. Parky, you were, as a scientist, interested in the corona, weren't you?
There's a totally smooth ball in the sky, but what we're going to realise in a second is that it's not. It's got mountains and it's got valleys, and the sun's going to poke out. The last little bit of the sun will poke out through the last little valley, and there it goes now.
Now that's the scene in France. It's a difficult thing to photograph at the best of times. I think here in Cornwall we have shown you the most spectacular pictures of the eclipse, which were shot from our area, a Hercules transport plane. They're having, I think, difficulty filming this in France, so they'll have to use our pictures later on. But there on the ground, as we had here, it has gone pitch black. Now we're getting the weather front that was following the eclipse here in Cornwall, and we're just getting drenched. But we don't care, because we have seen something. There we are. A total eclipse of the sun over France. Now I'm joined by Mauricio, who was watching this with us in Cornwall. He just came here to see the total eclipse. You're looking at pictures now of the eclipse over France. How was it for you?
Well, I never thought I'd see anything to rival England's 4-1 victory over Holland in Euro 96, but this certainly did it. Something very special.
How would you describe that moment as it gets dark and you're suddenly aware that we're in for something very special?
Well, we've been expecting it for some time, but you never quite could anticipate the speed at which the countryside became dark.
Well, the speed is illustrated. We're now on a camera in Belgium watching the same site. This totality line is travelling at more than 1,500 miles an hour. It wasn't just the fact it went black, though, was it? It was the temperature drop, the silence, and then the crowds reacting. It was a very moving experience.
I mean, it definitely was. I think we all commented to each other that if we were unaware what was about to happen.
Oh, there we have, Richard, the second diamond ring.
And I think we saw a good example there of the way that we saw the sun first appearing down these valleys on the surface of the moon.
These give Bailey's beads.
That's right,
which are speckles of light here on Earth. Now, actually, as this phenomenon travels eastward, of course, the vision of it will get better and better. But it has to be said, even in thick cloud, it was an experience which nothing can prepare you for.
Absolutely not. It's such a simple event to describe. It's simply the shadow passing over the surface of the Earth. But
this is Saarbrücken on the French border. They're 20 seconds away from the moment of totality. I'm just very jealous because I can understand now anybody who wants to travel the world to see one of these things. And what you were seeing there was the eeriest sight here. Suddenly, in the middle of the day, these flash cameras were the only light you could see. And this is a scene that's going to be repeated in towns and cities across Europe on the line of totality. Mauricio is still with us, who was here at Pendennis Castle at 11:11 on the 11th of August. That's a date you're not going to forget, isn't it?
Absolutely. No, right up there with the top sporting events of my life.
Come on, this was bigger.
Certainly longer in the preparation.
This is definitely Sky News you're watching. We're bringing you live pictures from the line of totality, and you can just see there what we're about to see as the sun returns. It is the quickest dawn you will ever see. And Richard, that was just as it was here. It was the quickest 2 minutes I have ever known, because suddenly on the horizon you could see the sun coming back, and indeed there is the moon gradually moving away from the sun.
Yeah, that 2 minutes seems to pass very quickly, but what seems to happen even quicker is at the end of totality, the speed with which things just return to normality again. It's almost unbelievable that you've just been through this experience, because the sky's bright again, everything's back to normal, the sun's back again. What a relief. It came back.
You weren't entirely sure, were you, that it was ever going to return? I think the look on people's faces says it all. They've been through a remarkable experience, a once-in-a-lifetime experience for most. And even with the umbrellas, and it's sad that here in Cornwall, and indeed obviously where we're looking in Europe, the weather has let us down. But nevertheless, nothing can take away from the experience of this 1999 total eclipse. Richard, I mentioned on air one of the things that you noticed as that horizon appeared. The birds began singing again, and nature has a way of terrifying other aspects of nature, doesn't it?
What was interesting is that people have asked me whether the birds would go quiet. They'd heard these stories of the birds going quiet. I certainly wasn't conscious of the birds becoming quiet, but what was clearly noticeable was the sound of the seagulls as this sort of false dawn came around. The seagulls all seemed to wake up and think that it was dawn again, and it was quite noticeable.
We went through a dusk and a dawn in the space of a 10-minute period. With all the weather that went with it. It was like the middle of the night, and the weather was as cold. Now, let's just show you. That was, I mean, anybody watching that picture live, we've all seen it in various books, in newspapers. We've seen it recorded, but nothing prepared you for that live moment, did it?
Yeah, and one of the aspects that we've not looked at very closely yet, but which certainly would have been noticeable had it been clear, and I think you can see it on those pictures, as the little pink features around the edge of the black disk. These are prominences on the sun. This is the hot gas being blasted out from the sun out to huge distances, many times the diameter of the Earth, and you're actually getting a direct view here of what is actually a very active sun.
Now, one man who has been planning more than most for this moment was Robin Hughes, who brought his own telescope with him. How much good was it to you at the moment?
None at all, unfortunately, but nevertheless, it's still been a very enjoyable experience, and not what I expected. It was so much darker than I anticipated. I imagine it's the cloud cover has contributed a lot to that, but marvellous effect.
What was nice was that there were no lights, there was no human interruption. That rather sums up the day for you, doesn't it?
Unfortunately, yes. Try and keep it dry.
Will any astronomer today with that sort of equipment have got anything out of this eclipse if they were in this part of Cornwall?
No, not with this sort of weather. There's no way you can penetrate that sort of cloud. Very unfortunate, really.
Okay, now, well, if it was spooky here on land, I'd love to know what it was like if you were on a boat. That's the line of totality that we've been talking about. We've seen it in Tournai, we've seen it in Paris and Saarbrücken. It's heading now for Munich before it heads further. Romania actually is where you will have the longest sight of a total eclipse of the sun. We're 3 minutes away from Munich, and it has literally taken all our breath away, so forgive us if we sound overexcited, but we are. It has just been an awe-inspiring sight, not just a sight, a feeling, and we're still seeing it. With the weather here is on the change. It's going to be a lot warmer later on today. Now, we were on firm ground, and I nearly fell off the back of my seat just trying to work out what was going on. What on earth was it like at sea? Let's find out. David Chater was on a boat in the middle of Falmouth Bay. Over to you, David.
Simon, the people here on board the good ship Enterprise were saying that the whole experience was weird, it was spooky, didn't go on long enough, there was too much light on the horizon, but overall they were eating their Cornish pasties, they were popping champagne, and they were absolutely delighted to be here despite the fact it's been pretty rough, it's been pretty cold, and we were getting squally rain showers. But it was an amazing experience. All along the coastline we saw the flashbulbs of people taking pictures of the moment of totality. I don't know what those photographs are going to be like, but let's talk to some of the people who spent £30 for this round trip at sea. What did you actually feel about that moment as it came over?
It was something rather special. It was didn't really know what to expect with all of this. Nighttime was a way it had been described by some, but it was nothing like nighttime at all. Just something completely different. You could see, whilst we were in darkness, there was clear daylight visible on the far horizons. It was just unreal. I don't think I'll see that again. I really don't. It's special.
If you had to write home about it, exactly what would you say?
It's difficult to describe. It's just an incredible experience. You had to be here, I think, and a disappointment, I guess, that we didn't see the disk of the moon crossing the sun because of the cloud, but nevertheless, just an unbelievable experience. It really is, I don't know, indescribable. I'm waffling now. I can't think of anything to say about it. It's brilliant.
I know.
It was special.
It robs you of words, doesn't it?
It does. It is. It's really.
How about you, exactly? What did you think about it?
Just a spooky experience, really. A once-in-a-lifetime experience, obviously, for us.
Okay. That's all we've got time for, I'm afraid. So here from the good ship Enterprise, we beam you back to Simon McCoy on firm ground at the castle.
Thank you very much indeed. Well, there in Munich, you're watching a live television output there, 20 kilometers south of the center line of totality Munich, and the city's 2 million citizens probably going to get a better view of totality than we did here, but it's about more than that, an eclipse of the sun. We didn't know that before, but we certainly do now. We've got a Scottish member of the team who's just said goosebumps galore was how he described it, and it probably is one of the better descriptions of the day. Just an impossible thing to put into words. That's Munich, on the path of totality. It has been through France, through Germany. That's a colleague from German television who's as excited as we are. It's heading off to Vienna. After that, it's going to graze northeastern Slovenia. But it doesn't matter where you are. If you're on the line of totality, you are going to witness something incredibly special. Now, we saw Paris go black. We've seen London go to 95, 96% totality, so an amazing view there, regardless of the fact that it wasn't here in Cornwall or South Devon. And I just want to stress the importance of why we were here. On the line of totality, it went pitch black. You couldn't see the hand in front of you. You didn't know who you were sat next to. You didn't know what was happening. It went cold, the birds, everything went totally silent, and then you could hear everybody in the crowds just reacting with awe to the experience of a total eclipse. Now this is what's happening in Turkey. They're an hour away. They will probably have a clearer view, but there is cloud there clearly. We're looking at a shot from the ground. Now Richard Wade, who's getting freezing cold here because we're getting the follow-up to an eclipse. It brings its own weather pattern, doesn't it?
Well, it does. I'm not sure whether this rain is being brought by the eclipse or just by the weather front that Francis has been warning about. But it's certainly cold. That's for sure. I mean, it did get noticeably colder during the totality itself, but I have to say I wasn't concentrating on that. I was concentrating on the quality of the light.
You can imagine what it must have been like in times where they weren't as aware of eclipses. They certainly weren't aware of the timing of them, where the sun just disappeared like that. It was terrifying. Even though we'd been planning for it for weeks, it was terrifying when it came.
Even when we know down to the last second when to expect the totality to take place, it appears so suddenly, almost as a shock to the system that it's happened. Imagine when people were not expecting that to happen at all. They must have been absolutely terrified. It would have been unimaginable.
Robin Hughes is with us. Disappointment, of course, that you weren't able to use your telescope to the level you wished, but nevertheless, you wouldn't have missed that for the world, would you?
Oh, certainly not. It's been a marvellous day out with the family and just to experience the atmosphere here, and still can't get over how dark it actually got, and just all the fantastic colours that were still in the sky, even though it was so dark. It's very difficult to describe.
All right, well, I'm going to make you describe it. Picture yourself 30 years from now, you're talking to your grandchildren, you're saying, I was there in 1999 on Pendennis Castle. How would you describe it?
It was very dark to start with, and then the shadow came across, although we couldn't see any shadow band as such, but the level of light dropped off dramatically, and I was aware of sort of yellows and oranges all around the sky. I didn't know where to look. Everywhere you looked, you could see a sort of different shade of light. It was fascinating.
But the clouds themselves, they all changed colour. There was a sort of purple hue at some point, wasn't there? And then it literally just went black.
That's right, yes. I was looking up there was a gap. I thought, please, move over, but it just didn't quite make it.
Now, you're going to have to pack up your telescope and go home, but it hasn't been a wasted journey.
Not at all, no. Thoroughly enjoyed it.
Richard, we're looking at these pictures from Turkey. One can only look with envy because we know now what they are going to go through, but in Turkey and indeed in that part of the world, they will see what you were hoping to see, which is that wall of the moon shadow heading towards you. But as we've been saying all along, no two eclipses are the same.
That's right. No two eclipses are the same because of the weather here on Earth and because of the actual weather that takes place on the sun itself, which changes the appearance of the corona and changes the prominences that we can see. My thoughts now are with a team that we have out in Romania that have gone out there to get the best chance of good weather, and they'll be doing scientific experiments on the corona to look for oscillations in the corona itself.
Now they picked that area because that's the longest period of totality.
It's the longest period of totality, yes, but more importantly it stands a very good chance of getting clear weather, and we've been building equipment to observe the eclipse for the last 2 years, and although we'd dearly have loved to do that experiment here in Cornwall, we thought that it was more important to take our, get the best chance of getting clear weather. We have been doing some experiments down here in Cornwall, radio experiments on the ionosphere down at Helston, and they will have been unaffected by the weather, so we will get some very valuable scientific results from this eclipse.
Now this is Lake Ballaston in Hungary. This lies wholly within the path of totality, where duration will be 2 minutes 22 seconds, a bit longer than here. And as the shadow leaves Hungary, the southern third briefly sweeps through northern Yugoslavia before continuing on to Romania. It's just looking at what we're seeing and using the equipment we're using. Do you learn anything from that vision?
No, not really. The only thing that one can learn from these sorts of observations are the detailed timings of the events, the time of the eclipse itself, and people do accurately record that and can learn things about the orbits of the Earth and the Moon, and indeed something about the size of the Sun from those observations. But we're not doing any other science with this particular phenomenon. There is this effect on the ionosphere. The ionosphere, which aids radio communication around the world, is driven by the effects of solar winds in such a way that radio communication changes during the night, and it changes during the eclipse as well. And there are experiments going on to to monitor that. And even the effect that we're seeing on the pictures there will be affecting radio communications across Europe right now.
We actually hear all our mobile phones went completely dead just before. Is that something that one was aware may happen?
I'm not aware of a scientific explanation for that. It may well be that
I think if anything goes wrong at the moment, you can blame it on the eclipse.
That the cellular phone people maybe had the foresight to turn off the networks to avoid the irritation of phones going off, but I can't think of a scientific reason why that would have happened.
Now the reason that it will be best in Romania too is that that is where the axis of the moon shadow is going to be closest to Earth, hence the duration of the totality.
The duration will be longer, yeah, and that's I mean, clearly, had we been able to see the corona, we would have appreciated those few extra minutes. But more importantly, for the scientists who are doing experiments, that'll give them vital extra seconds to take measurements of the.
Now, this is what happened here above the skies of Cornwall at 11:11. Now, everybody just went. There was a silence, and then it took your breath away. That side of what was that bright flash?
The bright flash, I mean, I suspect the bright flash that we saw there on the screen is the television cameras desperately trying to cope with huge changes in the light level. I think if you'd been able to see that with the naked eye, you would basically have been looking through your viewers at that point, right up until that very last moment. So you wouldn't actually have seen that with the naked eye. But the last flash, that diamond ring, is just the last little bit of the bright disk of the sun appearing from behind the moon's disk, and then your eyes start to have to adapt very quickly to the change in light levels. Your eyes are very good at doing that, but there is a time lag. There's the seconds that it takes.
Now this was a shot taken from above the clouds. Now, ironically, because the clouds were there, we didn't see that corona. There was no light at all, which maybe because of the clouds it went darker than we might even have expected.
Well, the corona itself has about the brightness of a full moon, so had it been totally clear, you would have expected the ground to be illuminated at about that level, about the level of a full moon.
So at least we can say it was darker here than anywhere else.
It was probably darker as a result of it being a cloudy night. Just as when there's a full moon, it's much darker if there are clouds than if it's a clear night.
Now this is a rare event. The next one in the British Isles is going to be in just over 90 years' time. But in global terms, they're not irregular occurrences. Every 18 months or so there is an eclipse somewhere.
Yeah, there isn't one next year, but there is one the year after. I can't in the excitement of the moment, remember exactly where that is. In South Africa, I think. But there is one roughly every year to 18 months. Not one next year, but I'm sure a lot of people, having come here to Cornwall to watch this one, will be enthused to go and travel, perhaps to South Africa to see the next one.
Robin, is it something that you, with your telescope, I mean, just look at that as the sun re-emerges. It still is an awesome sight.
The diamond ring effect there. And in a few moments there'd be Bailey's beads when the sun is shining through more craters on the edge of the moon, and then the crescent, and it's all over.
It was all over very quickly.
It was, wasn't it? Yes, brightness was soon on us.
What was strange and similar for anybody watching this was that you could see it coming, you could see the darkness approach, and then what you weren't expecting was you could then see the sunset heading towards you, and it just took this darkness away.
Very strange effect. It's very difficult to describe, isn't it? It's something that you've got to experience for yourself to fully appreciate it.
Well, Robin, thank you very much indeed for joining us.
Thank you.
Let's take you back to Hungary. That's Lake Balaton, which is just moments away from totality. That's a line, the line of totality we've been talking about all day, starting to the west of the British Isles, came across Cornwall, where we were. It's gone over Paris. It's just been over Munich, and Lake Balaton, the pictures we showed you a moment ago, and we'll go back to, is next in the line before it heads off towards the Far East. Eclipse 99, a program you can prepare for endlessly, but which can never prepare you for what we've seen here. We're joined by the Mayor of Falmouth, himself an amateur astronomer, who was looking forward to this event. We're watching pictures in Turkey now, but Mr. Mayor, what a morning.
As I said to you before, it was remarkably beautiful. We thought we were going to be greatly disappointed, and in respect of not seeing the total eclipse sun itself.
Now that, well, what we're looking at, I won't let you guess, but this is Turkey. What we've just seen is Hungary, where the total eclipse, and this is Turkey, where they're as excited about this as anyone anywhere else in the world who's on the line of totality. What struck me is, certainly here in Cornwall, for the people who'd come here, once the sun was back, they've just all gone. We're lucky, we can keep taking you around the world to see the totality, but for 2 minutes, was it worth it in your view?
Very, very much worth it indeed. It was such a beautiful effect.
You won't have seen this. This is Hungary now. We were able to show pictures from above the clouds here in Cornwall, and it was the same sight. Now what's happening on the ground is what we experienced, which was that total darkness. Was that something you were prepared for?
It was very emotional. I can understand that the people of centuries before who didn't know this was coming must have been extremely scared, must have thought that the sun was being eaten up, tried to chase it away. I found it most emotional, very beautiful. It was a wonderful thing to see, and it, up to a point, made up for not seeing the total eclipse sun, not seeing that wonderful corona around it, not being able to see the stars and the brighter stars of the planets in the heavens. What we're seeing now there, of course, is of course the real thing.
Let me show you a side of your town, Falmouth, that you won't have seen. Let's just show you what happened here in Falmouth at 11:11 as this shadow passed over Falmouth. Just describe, cast your mind back. What was going through your mind as it just went dark? That's Givor, in fact, just off the western coast, and you can see there.
It's dramatic. It really is dramatic. The way that the light, which had been going down at a slow rate for quite some time, suddenly dropped like that. I knew, technically I knew that it would happen, that if it had been clear we would have seen the actual line of the shadow coming towards us at 2,300 miles an hour from the west. But to see it like that, like I say, as well.
That's Hungary. I'm just explaining. We're now looking at pictures live from Hungary, and that moment where the sun reappeared, where it was just suddenly all over.
Well, did you hear that? How the crowd cheered, how there was applause, that they really had enjoyed what they were able to see.
Here we are at the end of the 20th century. We knew it was coming. We knew exact times. And yet there was a little bit of you, wasn't there, that wasn't sure the sun was going to come back. It was a very emotional moment.
A bit of the old primeval man still within us, yes.
Now this, I think, is Givor. We brought you the first pictures as this total eclipse hit the British Isles. I use the word hit advisedly. It was just on us. And just as quickly as it was on us, it had left us. But for that period of total darkness, there wasn't a hair lying flat on anybody's neck. The goosebumps were everywhere.
If we'd have had it clear, we would have seen it as a beautiful Oxford blue. A lovely Oxford blue with that beautiful golden yellow around the horizon where the shadow hadn't reached.
And what was particularly strange was to see all those camera flashes going off in the middle of the day, and they were the only light anywhere.
I expect quite a few of the people who were close by them were probably saying don't do it, because it was making their pupils close up so they couldn't see properly see all the wonderful effects in the sky. I seem to remember some time ago people saying don't do that, don't use flash, don't put your car headlights on, that sort of thing.
Nick, we've seen how people have been reacting to the eclipse so far as it tracks its way from the north, northwest to the east, southeast. How are they reacting to it where you are?
They're pretty excited, really. I'm in a little village right in the centre of the path, actually perched up on the roof of a thatched cottage watching it. It's just past the sort of centre now, so it's getting light again now. The village is full of people. It normally has only about 20 houses here, 100 or so people. It's packed with people camping in the gardens all along the roads throughout this part of Hungary. People are camped beside the road. They've made whole tents out of this special protective watching material, and so people are pretty excited. The whole country's come to a standstill.
We saw pictures from this end, Nick, there of a large bonfire. I don't know, I suspect you can't see the pictures we're looking at. Is this being viewed as a scientific extravaganza, or is it being viewed more as a spiritual event?
I think people are pretty moved by it. Obviously, the scientists are out in force with their telescopes as well, but mostly it's more a sort of carnival atmosphere. But I think that sort of party atmosphere we've had in the last few days that build up to it, where everything went very quiet, not just the birds, but the people. I think people were amazed. However much they'd read or heard about it in advance, no one was quite prepared for what they'd seen. And sort of amazing silence descended on the whole countryside, even among the people watching as it passed over.
Nick, thank you for that. We're also talking to Professor Len Culhane. You were looking at the actual eclipse. Take us to what you were looking at.
Yes, in particular, at about 11 o'clock on that frame, quite a remarkable large helmet. In fact, there it is again. It's a very high structure, perhaps 150,000 kilometers, coming to a sharp point.
That is not actually the We're also talking to Professor Len Culhane. You were looking at the actual eclipse. Take us to what you were looking at.
Yes, in particular, at about 11 o'clock on that frame, quite a remarkable large helmet. In fact, there it is again. It's a very high structure, perhaps 150,000 kilometers, coming to a sharp point.
That is not actually the arc shape. What you're talking about was a little image just
in the gas, yes, yeah. In the corona proper. And the sun, of course, puts out a steady stream of gas called the solar wind, and two speeds, a fast wind, a slow wind. The slow wind is not understood at the moment, but it's believed that it may originate in these very large helmet-like structures. The magnetic field, although it appears closed, may in a subtle way open and permit this stuff to flow out. So these helmets, streamers in general, helmets in...
For now, goodbye.
Summerfield's price check has great...
Awesome, there it is. These are the
Hello and welcome back to Marazion in our beautiful setting opposite the now floodlit St Michael's Mount. Just a couple of hours ago, day turned to night for the second time today. The sun first went out this morning when mainland Britain saw its first total eclipse for 72 years. It was an awe-inspiring sight at an awe-inspiring time, 11 minutes past 11 on the 11th of August. We'll be looking back at the most magical and moving moments. We'll also be finding out how people marked this rare event, from a full Druid wedding to an exclusive eclipse-watching trip aboard Concorde. And we'll be tracking the eclipse as it raced away from Britain to the continent on an epic 2-hour journey across some of the most heavily populated regions on Earth.
Well, they say seeing a total eclipse is a once-in-a-lifetime experience. But I'll be talking later to someone who's now seen two. 89-year-old Bertha Warren also saw the last eclipse on the British mainland way back in 1927. She's here with her great-granddaughter Danielle.
And with me to help make sense of what we've seen today are three astronomers with a wealth of experience of total eclipses. Patrick Moore, of course, and alongside him, Francisco Diego, who was helping us out earlier on today, and also John Parkinson over there, who gave us many an insight. Now, Patrick, you didn't see the last one in Britain, did you? But you've seen an awful lot since then.
Yes, my first in 1954, and my last in 1998. And believe me, every eclipse is different, and a total eclipse of the sun is the most magnificent sight in all nature.
Francisco, you're actually a professional eclipse chaser, aren't you?
I saw my first eclipse in 1970, and since then I have been developing photographic techniques and video techniques now to record this magnificent event.
John, for those people who don't know actually what happened today, just give us a quick reminder. What did we actually see?
Well, let me show you with a model that we've got here. We had today this amazing lineup of the sun here lining up perfectly with the moon to cast a shadow onto the earth. This wonderful, amazing coincidence of sizes, because the sun is so much bigger than the moon, but it's further away. And this time, the total shadow came to us here.
Patrick, we were very lucky, weren't we, in many ways, because this eclipse actually came across populated areas.
So often the moon shadow crosses sea or inaccessible areas, but this one, as I say, crossed very densely populated areas. It went across England, of course, into Europe, and then to France, Germany, Austria, down to Iran, Iraq, Turkey, and then finally ended in India round about sunset. Very densely populated areas, so we were well lucky there.
Okay, but first we're going to concentrate on the British leg of that journey. While it all began in the Atlantic, the eyes of the world were on Britain, and first landfall in the Isles of Scilly, followed less than a minute later by Cornwall and parts of Devon. Meanwhile, the rest of the UK, weather permitting of course, would see a partial eclipse, with the moon covering just part of the sun. So let's look now at how events unfolded this morning, as the greatest natural show on Earth swept into Britain. Just after 6 a.m. we witnessed a beautiful sunrise. Slowly Cornwall woke up to eclipse day, and with the dawn came the cues.
Oh, we got up at 4:30, the alarm went on and off. Insane.
Unfortunately, the viewing conditions in Cornwall were far from ideal.
There's a lot of cloud up the western side, rain coming out over the Isles of Scilly, up into southern Ireland as well.
All we need now is for these wretched clouds to clear away and give us a nice clear sky.
It was the same across the southwest. Everywhere was overcast. Jamie Theakston chased the sun to the Channel Islands.
The weather's looking a little bit patchy, to be honest, but the Eclipse Rapid Response Unit here in Alderney is ready to go.
But we were sure of a clear view above the clouds. An RAF Hercules was our aerial camera platform. At 9:57, the Hercules camera recorded these stunning pictures of first contact. On the ground, Helen Young planned to observe the weather during totality.
It doesn't matter that it's cloudy, it doesn't matter that it's wet, because the temperature will still drop. As the moon goes across the sun, it will get colder. So this is a temperature sensor here. We've also got an anemometer which will measure the wind speed.
As Cornwall was blanketed in cloud, most of the country enjoyed clear skies, from London to Newcastle, Norwich to Bristol. Outside totality, everyone was enjoying the view. Fortunately, Alderney might just remain clear. High above the Earth, the Mir space station tracked the moon's shadow towards Britain. Then at 10:45 in Cornwall...
We're beginning to see over to the west now, even out of our window. We can begin to see the clouds darkening over there to the west. That's the shadow, the serious shadow now, on its way towards us.
A few minutes later, the street lights of Penzance came on. An eerie dusk was engulfing Mounts Bay. At 33,000 feet, much higher than planned because of exceptionally high cloud, the Hercules steered a course for totality. First the diamond rings, then the corona. At the Radio 1 Roadshow, they watched on a big screen. Everyone was excited. The Channel Islands saw prominences.
We got totality in Alderney.
And then came Bailey's beads. But all too quickly it was over. A new diamond ring appeared as the moon left the sun's disk. Philippa's out there. What's the atmosphere like there now, Philippa?
Well, we're
even without the
teary.
sun.
We're very teary.
Did you enjoy that?
Chris, I mean, remarkable scenes then.
Jamie, we've just stood in the shadow of the moon. I mean, I can't say more than that. It was travelling over our heads at 2,000 miles an hour. Everything went dark. There was this eerie twilight around us, 360 degrees. I'm so moved. It was the most amazing experience of my life.
As for your experiments, how did it all go? Do you know, it's actually fantastic. Let me show you what happened. Over here, you can see the temperature did actually drop during totality. There was the peak of it there.
Gradually, things returned to normal as Britain recovered from its second dawn. Despite the clouds, it had been an astonishing spectacle, and just before the moon cleared the sun's disk, I got to see what the fuss was about. The clouds finally cleared over Cornwall, but only briefly.
Well, it was a novelty for me, but not a novelty for you three. I mean, you're hardened eclipse watchers. Patrick?
No, unusual for me. I've seen several eclipses, as I say, but first time I've been under leaden skies, and it was quaint, an eerie kind of sensation. I didn't expect, and it was, you're transported to another world, I think, for briefly. Well, something rather sinister.
Francisco, you must have been no disappointed, really. You've had all your cameras there.
Well, yes, but not at all. This was a very special eclipse. I agree with Patrick. It was a very atmospheric eclipse with very, very dark eclipse because of the clouds. We have fantastic scenery around us. It was amazing.
I think we've still got the atmosphere here now. John, what about you?
It was unusual because, of course, I wasn't focused on the corona for the whole time. I was able to look around. It's not often you get that chance when you're focused on your scientific measurements, and this huge black arch over us and the lighting behind St Michael's Mount, wonderful.
Which was the best moment for you? Patrick, that first moment, do you think, when it bites in? Or maybe what they call the second contact?
No question at all. When the last bit of the sun disappears and the corona flashes out, that is the great moment when the eclipse is really,
second
really
contact
underway.
here where you can see the corona.
Yep.
But John, I remember when I was talking to you, it was when it came the other side, the third contact they call it, where we get the same impression as it's actually leaving the front of the sun.
Here we're watching it from the Hercules, and there you see the sun popping over the moon.
It's that magic moment when it comes back, isn't it?
Magical diamond ring, which leaves a lasting impression. This very precious, this very
Francisco,
lucid.
I remember during our programme, you were talking about what are they called, Bailey's beads. We had a good shot of them from Alderney, didn't we?
Yes, they were excellent. Look at that on the right. They appear on the right as the valleys of the moon are filtering the light from the photosphere, from the bright part of the sun. Look at that, beautiful thing, producing yet another diamond ring.
And that was the view from Alderney. But Patrick, I suppose the best view wasn't from on Earth at all. The best view actually was from in space, from one of those space stations. Do you approve of space stations?
I do indeed.
Patrick?
The Mir space station, they at least had no cloud trouble. And there we have the view from Mir. That was the view we'd all have liked to have had.
And this time, Bertha?
Well, I remember the early rising, 5:30 in the morning, and then I had to go and collect all my pals.
Yeah.
And we went only 5 minutes from home at the back of our house.
And when it was all over, the opera singer Jessie Norman welcomed the sun back in a song. Germany at around 11:30 our time, taking in the major cities of Stuttgart and Munich. Sadly, the weather was so cloudy that it wasn't until the eclipse reached the Austrian Alps 15 minutes later that most people got the first clear chance to see for themselves the magic of a disappearing sun. Even the Pope got in on the act, interrupting a holiday trip to watch the eclipse through his own specially prepared piece of glass. It was just after 11:45 when the eclipse reached Eastern Europe. It had now slowed down, and Hungary's Lake Balaton saw an eclipse 20 seconds longer than Britain's. Here, the festivities were taking on a more ceremonial feel, with the lakeside the scene of a near-pagan celebration dance in honor of totality. By Romania, the eclipse was moving at its slowest, and the centre of the country saw the longest eclipse of all, 2 minutes 23 seconds. The BBC's Jeremy Cook was there.
Here in Romania, the day began with thick cloud cover, and there were fears that here, as in so much of Europe, the view of the eclipse would be ruined. By about midday, though, the clouds had cleared, the skies were fantastically blue, and it was perfect viewing conditions. Even here, in a country where myths and legends abound about werewolves and vampires, it seems that everybody's had a great day out. That may in part be thanks to the local soothsayer who's been taking the whole thing very seriously and giving people hints on how to protect themselves. There are vampires all around us, he says. They will try to attack, but God is looking after us, and we will be safe. The town of Rumnicu Vulture celebrated being the site of...
It was fantastic. We are very lucky that we had the opportunity to live this moment.
It was great. It was a wonderful experience for me.
People fled on the streets of the Romanian capital to take advantage of what were ideal viewing conditions there. The cross was burned to ward off evil spirits. So far, it seems to have been successful.
A little after midday, and the shadow began to pick up speed again as it entered Turkey. On the edge of the Black Sea, the waiting crowds were making a nervous presenter's job more difficult than it need be. But by the time the eclipse reached totality, the atmosphere was much happier. Although Israel was off the line of totality, with only 80% of the sun covered, people still came out in droves. Even Prime Minister Ehud Barak took time out for a well-rehearsed photo call. After crossing Iraq, the shadow entered Iran and passed over some of the least populated areas of its journey. By 1 o'clock, it had reached the city of Isfahan. And as predicted, Iran turned out to be one of the sunniest places en route, and so one of the best places to study the unique characteristics of a total solar eclipse. By Pakistan, the sun was so low in the sky that the eclipse lasted little more than a minute. And the last place on Earth to see the eclipse was India. At around 1:30 our time, the shadow disappeared as the sun and the moon went their separate ways.
Did all that make you three feel sick that you were